Good morning, everyone. This is our session on the social and cultural module for VSIG, and my special guest, good friend, is Judith Hellerstein. Uh, long dedicated person on this issue, has practical knowledge that we the difference with Judith and myself, I'm all over the map. I have 101 things I'm doing, but Judith focuses, and she's been a jewel along with Jolly in working with the ISOC special interest group. But I don't want to jump the gun on it. But Judith, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go back and forth on this topic today.
Well, I'm here to talk about one of my other passions, which is accessibility for persons with disabilities.
Hmm.
Uh, so I will leave out all my other work. Like Glenn, I am focused on a lot of different areas, whether
Right.
it's active in a couple different ISOC chapters, whether it's um more of my revenue producing work, which is, on international development, helping out developing countries. But we're going to focus on here the work on accessibility and for persons with disabilities. So
But my point is, Judith, is that you take on these causes which you don't have any personal benefits from. They're not part of your community, but you're dedicated to helping those individuals who are less represented, correct?
right, well, so same thing with people who are dedicated to helping out people with connectivity issues.
Right.
People were like you don't have any indigenous experience, but yet you've been dedicating hours and hours to working with the indigenous communities
Right.
and the First Nations in Canada. So it's just something that you've been passionate about.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it also has to do with you're passionate about helping making sure that the Internet Society logo, the internet is for everyone, and that everyone has the equal chance, and that we are working to make sure that everyone has an equal chance. Just like you're doing with the school, you wanted to make sure that everyone had the knowledge, and so you're offering these free classes. This is a huge passion for you. You're not looking at this to make money. You're just want to make sure that you're not losing money.
There's a subtle there's a subtle difference in that, but that's a very good point, Judith. I agree.
You know, um, and when I say losing money, it's not like not your time, but the actual money expenses that you spent.
Yeah,
But
and you and I have been both involved with IGF and ICANN and ISOC. It's an alphabet soup for and the importance of what we're talking about, folks, is that this is like a disease or a bug. It gets you and it gets under your skin, but you can make a difference, and it's a long journey. And I also you were involved with the IGF USA as well, so there's such a long list, and
right,
there.
yeah.
You know, yeah. Okay.
So
So as you say, let's just
so then
focus on.
I think I first got involved in accessibility um when I was active on the U.S. delegation for the for maybe plenipotentiary or council back prior to 2014.
Okay.
Um, and I think I heard a talk by Andrea Best. No,
Oh,
Andrea Sachs.
which most famous person at IGF on this issue. She was a world leader for
Not
sure.
IGF, I mean ITU issues.
ITU. Sorry.
I've never been to an IGF.
Yeah.
Um, so and what she was then talking about was all about making sure that things are accessible for persons with disability
Hmm.
by um, looking at looking at ideas of how to make things and how to use the alternative text feature. And so there's a couple of so I got very involved in that, and I decided to be an advocate. And so I started working on these. The issues here were mostly on providing captioning. So when there's videos that need to be captioned, when there's others, so that is what I started getting involved, and I ran and I started trying to advocate because for captioning because currently in ICANN, prior to the efforts in the at-large community, in ICANN, it was only the government advisory coalition committee that had captioning.
Right.
None of the other groups had it.
Hmm.
While at large had interpretation, which is something that other groups didn't have. They didn't have captioning. And for a while they wouldn't even turn on the Zoom captioning. But so we've been advocating, so we started in ICANN the first we used they used to have a process called additional budget requests. So at the end of the ICANN fiscal year, you could before the next year, you could apply for extra money for small ICANN projects that would meet the goals and the strategic plan of ICANN. So I think it was you and I teamed up to write these additional budget requests
Mhm.
where we got funding for English, and we did a pilot that we introduced captionings to ICANN, other communities. But we tied it to ICANN's mission of trying to get more people involved. And it's not necessarily only the deaf community. It is pretty much anyone where English is not the native language, or as you were describing before, some of the problems with this cohort are bandwidth issues.
Right.
Well, and having a separate stream text link is very effective because they won't be dropping all the time, and they could be picking up where they left off and that type of thing. So we pitched it along those lines only, and then it was a series of efforts to try to get that, and we were very successful with the board. We did have our problems with language services, but I think we never got a chance really to talk to them. The language services issues are mostly they want to make something perfect, and you know, if you're trying for perfection, you're not going to get there.
You got a good point there. So it's like playing horseshoes. Close enough is pretty good. Ideally, you want to score every time, but if you can make the effort, it may not be perfect, but it's at least enabling the community. And as you say, it's way beyond just the deaf community. If you start to add, because of our community, it's so many people do not speak English as a second language. And I'm picking on one person. For example, our good friend Cheryl from Australia, her accent sometimes, even though she's speaking English, I really don't pick it up sometimes because of my headphones or the noise in the room. So even her, I'll put the captioning on. So if you look way beyond, what is it, 15%, 18% are deemed with a
Yeah,
disability. So
50%, yeah.
it could be 50% of the audience, right? So
Okay.
it
Yeah, but also the problem is okay, we had an easier before they Zoom and others went for the AI captions. We
hmm,
had an easier time in getting paid human captioners, which is
right,
better.
right.
Now people refusing to do paid human captioners because they say, oh, the AI are good. They're not, they're 85%. So that's fine. And that's not fine for persons with disability. It may be fine for the other groups. But also, nothing, unless you are in a caption, unless you're a captioner, you cannot get a stream text link.
Okay.
You cannot get, and so you can't get a text only link. You can get captioning through Zoom, and then the Zoom can open up a pod, but when you lose your Zoom connection, it drops.
It's, yeah, right.
Um, So the only way of getting it is getting a stream text link for those people. But people are not doing that. Now, one of the other things I had in this eye-opening discussion with language services, because currently in ICANN, the government advisory committee, there's two large advocates for sign language and other interpretation. They have full RTT. They have full captioning in CART, real-time humans. But they have language, but they want to represent other language, so they want different sign language and that type of thing. And so they've been butting against language services, so they brought me in to, help with some advice. And so we had an eye-opening meeting with language services where their also issues is that they are worried about how things are going to be how different ICANN terms are represented in different languages.
Oh, right.
And so that's their also concern. But other concern is they don't have any data to show this. So we were working with, them to like, let's create some other, they were doing a survey, but I'm saying that what we need is what we've done on our accessibility guidelines. So let me just take back on here, in my journey, we've also been very active in, there's within the IGF, there are dynamic coalitions, which is another series of intersessional groups. The School of Internet Governance is one of the dynamic coalitions, but ours is one of the oldest ones, which is a dynamic coalition on accessibility and disability. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I became the helping on there because Andrea Sachs needed to retire, so I was her deputy. But like about 3 years ago, when it was dying, Dr. Shabir and I took it over. And so we worked to remake it and to have a new governance model. And one of the things also we worked on is wanting to get persons with disability issues to be active in in-person meetings. As you and I know from our ICANN time, until the ICANN changed the fellowship guidelines, they follow the UN. And so it means that countries that like the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, anyone any one of those cannot get the IGF fellowship, even though, and there's no section for disability fellows. So they cannot get any fellowship and they have no means of going there. Also, we took our disability fellowship a different way because Dr. Shabir had noticed that he was very much involved on the leadership committee of the APR IGF, and in their fellowships and most other ones, they give fellows an assigned amount, and everyone gets the same amount. But if person needs and it's only for them, but if someone who has vision impairment wants to come and from a developing country and needs someone to travel with them, that's
Mm-hmm.
not allowed. They have to pay for that out of their own pocket.
Mm.
So we structured our fellowship to be need-based. What do you need to get there?
Sorry, you're talking about the IGF, but I've never seen a disabled person in all the years I've been at ICANN either. So,
Right. There's no fellowship for them.
okay.
Oh, no, there is. Okay. There is person with disabilities. He's very active in the GNSO. And but he is not going as he's very active, but he's not requesting funds.
Right, right. But so if there's a sight out of mind, if those individuals are not sponsored and they're not physically there, mind you, you could say, well, they can do it as a Zoom meeting, but the importance is for other people to learn from what challenges they have. And as you say, captioning of videos is one step, translation is another, sign language is another, fellowship is another. There's a whole bunch of steps in order to enable the community have a fair chance, a fair shake,
Right.
as we say.
So we ended for the DCAD, we were luckily we have a sponsor. So it was through the gracious donation of Google and VinSurf that
Oh,
we
right.
have our Disability Fellows Fund. And Vint has also been sponsoring captioning. If you come to the our DCCG, a Dynamic Coalition Coordinating Group meetings that happen once a month, we have human captioning. That
Excellent.
that's
Excellent.
sponsored by Vint, as well as the captioning for MAG meetings.
Okay.
So that's part of his donation to the IGF, and it's part of his donation to us. And we've also qualified from him that it's not just fellowship, it's not just meant for travel, although that's the primary purpose, is what do we need in our dynamic coalition to be able to run? We're all volunteers.
Mm.
We don't want a group to we looked at, we thought he thought it might be helpful to have someone to have an admin group help us, but we don't want a paid admin group because they're going to change the focus of the efforts. And so what we want is to try to get more volunteer groups and to take on less things so that we can do them well. So we have a new fellowship. This is going to be our third year. Our disability fellows, bringing people with disabilities to the IGF
Okay.
and to get the in-person networking experience. And then we'll have a mentor to mentor them.
So I just want to go back. DCAD, what is the DCAD represent? What is that? What's it?
Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability.
And anyone can join that group?
Anyone can join the group because as a dynamic coalition, anyone can join.
Okay.
It's up on our website, igf-dcad.org. There's a join button.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, so if I'm in my country, I want to be an advocate for this issue. What do you recommend in terms of getting involved, possibly as a speaker or possibly what are the
Oh,
things that somebody who's new to this but is dedicated and passionate about it?
so there's many different ways to get involved. Um, Within your Internet Society chapter or
Ah,
other
right.
chapter, you could have a webinar and you could also join it. We'll be happy. Our other group, our sister, the Secretariat for DCAD is the Accessibility Special Interest Group, which is a project of ISOC New York. And we're happy to help you put on your webinar
Okay.
and find your speaker, help you find speakers or working with us to do that or provide captioning and that type of thing. So there's also the Internet Standing Group, accessibility as ISOC accessibility standing group, which is controlled and funded by ISOC. It's not an independent chapter because Internet Society had decided that they want to create all their special interest groups and standing groups with the same brush. They want everyone to be equal, even though it's not really. And so some groups branched off and left and became others. But I want to return to the focus of this group and what we're trying to teach here in the School of Internet Governance of how to introduce an accessibility culture.
Mm-hmm.
and
Now,
how
remember years ago, we did a survey with ICANN to actually do that with Ganella, remember?
right.
That we wanted to gauge what is the attitudes within an organization, and are they pro accessibility? Or do they enable people? Do they have staff? So how do you measure the culture of accessibility in an organization?
Well, the main problem is with ICANN and with ISOC and all others is they don't have someone um they don't have someone whose responsibilities that they're on perform that they're being judged on in their work performance are accessibility. Everyone takes it up as a result. Um, oh, we need to do this.
Hmm.
So that is the issue there. And it's a and that's also why they don't want to hire someone, they want to do other stuff. But what we were trying to do was raise the concept. Unfortunately, we had some other people on it who don't believe that persons with disabilities should be treated differently. And so,
I'm a bit speechless on that. I don't know. Uh, I don't know what kind of society you have when when we advocate for internet for all, and some people exclude. What is it because of the cost? Is it because they?
no,
So what's the
they
reason not
feel,
to do it?
well, okay, they feel like they feel they shouldn't be given special, different treatment. They should be just, everything should be just made just like, they're not saying, oh, let's not give people wheelchairs, let's not give people this. But there's no need to change the culture, they say, which I feel is wrong. But
Yeah, yeah, but it all starts with attitude, and
yes,
if we've seen this in many times within organizations, and they cry the blues. Oh, we don't have enough women applying for the fellowship, or we don't have enough whatever category group. And when you show them a mirror, the images you're doing, the language you're doing is exclusive, and I think it's important for an organization, especially like, for example, ICANN, which is embracing universal acceptance. It's beyond just language. It's being inclusive. Diversity is strength.
right. And so, right, so what we had been advocating there was, one, what ICANN did is they added an accessibility person when they were reviewing the website, so the websites were accessible. But what we don't know now is, as they add more content, does it continue to be accessible? And so we're going
Uh,
to work with ICANN about that. But problems we have are simple ones, is educating people.
okay,
Most of the people who I've talked to are uh, happy to make some changes as long as it doesn't impinge on them. But they don't want to do things that will take more effort from them.
okay,
It's the same issues we have cultural wise when you're doing changes for digital transformation. People think, why do I need to change?
right,
But
right.
what I wanted to talk about, as you were saying in these sessions for people, is how simple changes can you do you do something like when you having in Zoom, if you're putting up slides, you should put them up on the website and post in chat the link to the website so so persons with disability can see the slides ahead of time, or
Right.
can see the slides while you're talking, because they cannot see this. They use a screen reader and they to read, and they cannot see what's on the screen because it's your screen. So that is why it's important to put the presentation up in a on a website, and then provide a link to people or send it to them in advance.
I just noticed Bill in the chat. He added or just what you're saying, Judith, or just be able to zoom in on tiny type in a slide. Bill, did you
Right,
want to elaborate on that?
I just came out of a meeting where I had to do exactly that, go find the slide and zoom in because we were talking about diacritics in the Latin script.
right,
And on the font size that was in the slides, you couldn't see what the diacritics were.
Right, right.
There was sort of a blotch there. And that's why it's on the top of my mind, but I've encountered it before. And I'm not even visually impaired to any significant
right,
extent. But that sort of thing happens all the time.
right,
And it's just making the stuff available where somebody can, zoom in on it, or as Judith said, run it through a text reader or whatever, um, makes a world of difference.
right. And then also the thing is what people don't know is they use all these graphics to try to make it visually appealing. And now you've made them inaccessible to persons. So what you need to do on pretty much now, most of the major packages that people are using for office productivity packages, whether it's Word or run by Microsoft or others, have what's thing that's called alternative text. So you could right click on an image or any image, photo, table, whatever cannot be read by a screen reader. They'll say image like, oh, could be if it's two people talking. Oh, a white person with another white person talking, which is no help for anything. So what you could do is oftentimes you have to right click on that, but a lot of people don't want to do that because it takes effort. Oh, I have to do this. Another thing I have to do, and I'm running late, so I'm not going to do it. And so you try to make things more accessible. So the same thing, like you have any photo or even a logo, you don't even have to describe it. If it's like if you have your VSIG logo up there,
Mhm.
what you would do was right click on it and you would either say VSIG logo, or you could check a box that says mark as decorative. Like your VSIG, little things flowing on the side of your
Mhm.
slide, you would mark those as decorative because they're
Okay,
not really important to the slide.
sure.
But those type of things you have to mark for everyone. And it
Okay.
doesn't take much time to mark those. And it also for image, what people are doing and captioning and they're just showing pictures, but that is not helpful for persons with visual disabilities because they can't see anything.
Hmm.
So that's why you have to tag appropriately your photos, your images, and even the PowerPoints. Um, and also, as we were talking earlier, we need to caption all the videos and not only caption them, provide audio description. So like when people are laughing, if you notice when you have a human captioner, they will write people laughing, people talking a foreign language. They will provide an audio description of that. Another thing that is often problematical these days is people using a lot of emojis, and those should be described um, in the alternative text. And you
Gotcha.
might think that you could use an ASCII, like I used to think that you could use an ASCII art to describe it, but that's even worse for them because then the screen reader is reading open parentheses, dot, colon, which is not helpful to people either. So it's the best. So like even that is not really helpful.
Mhm.
But also when you're doing type fonts, people like to change just like a person who is without visual disabilities doesn't like to see multiple fonts in the same paragraph. That is distracting.
Mhm.
It's also very distracting to person with screen readers. So you just should try to keep things in a simple font and also try to keep things not not using so many bold or text things, because that also is distracting to someone with a screen reader who reads, oh, and some of the screen readers don't read the bold or other stuff, so it often skips out of those issues.
Right.
Um, um, Another common mistake that people made, and when you tell people, like when I've had in ICANN, when I've had discussions with planning and others about improving their things, they like, oh, I never thought of it. That's, that like they would do screenshots of tables to put them in their document, which now made them inaccessible. And they just didn't think about that. I said, what you most can do is you do a cut and paste, because then the program will make it accessible. So like if you copy a if you copy a table from Excel into a Word document, it will still make it accessible.
Mhm.
You just have to fix the formatting a little bit. You have to fix the formatting, and then that way that table will look fine in a document. But a lot of people don't want to do that. It's like, oh, that's an extra step. Oh, the snapshot's so much easier. Oh, it doesn't really matter to people. And they'll
Right.
give you 101 excuses.
So if we look at organizations, and we mentioned IGF, ICANN, ISOC, if they mandate that their staff follow these guidelines, which you clearly stated out, and I shared in the chat just some simple methods of how to do it. Do you get any encouragement from those people that run these organizations that, yeah, this is a good idea, let's follow it?
Yeah, they all say that.
Okay. Okay.
They all say that. And they all will talk about it. But because there's no culture for accessibility, it's not mandated in their thing. So it's always a afterthought. And
It's if we had unlimited money, we would do it. If only
no,
if we had
no, it's not
time.
that.
No.
It's not that. It's just like, oh yes, that's a good thing to do. Oh yes, that's good. Yes, that's a good idea to do.
Don't you? That's a little patronizing, I think.
It's just they are not adverse to do it. Well, also I give ICANN credit. Okay. Unlike ISOC or other organization, when you bring them a technical issue, they're
Yes.
like, oh yes, let's solve that issue.
Okay.
So like we brought something up when bring it up to the meetings team that there's an issue. Oh yes, that, and here's the solution. Yes, let's incorporate that. When you're saying something like, we sent something to I sent something to the meetings team because there was one of our persons reported something, there was a problem. They were then the meetings team fixed it. It's like, yes, the technical team, yes, this is an issue, let's fix it. So they will spend the money to do it, unlike others who may not, saying it's not, um because they are interested in making things more accessible. It's
Okay.
just that other ways, like if there's something small technical that is going to do, that's not going to have that much of an impact on them. But the other ones then becomes a money situation. But if there's a, if it's not necessarily a money, like, years ago, we brought into ICANN because the single sign-on they were using was not accessible. So we showed them a model that would be, and it's like, okay, yep, we'll adopt the model. It doesn't cost them anything in those areas. So
Right.
something that is technical that requires just some changing in some settings or something else like that is something they're willing to do. Also, when ICANN may not say they are, or they, we want to, what we were suggesting, or hopefully we'll get on the next ICANN meeting, is on the ICANN registration, instead of it just saying, do you have an accessibility issue?
Right.
A disability issue, please state, where people view that as, oh, that is something for mobility. No, I don't
Right.
have a mobility issue.
Right.
So we were suggesting that they may add some other lines to that registration. Basically, one of our things I just posted on the chat, the accessibility guidelines that we brought out at the last IGF. We introduced, and now we're having it in multiple languages. Is there's a in the registration form, there should be a couple different lines. Just like they asked about languages, do you need sign language? If so, what language? Do
Sure.
you need neck loops? So it's like the headphones you are wearing, a person with disabilities cannot wear those,
Gotcha.
because all people who have cochlear implants cannot wear them. They have these over the neck loops, around
Yeah.
the neck loops.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
Those are geared. And so we asked the meetings team if they could provide some of those,
Oh, did they?
and they will.
Okay, good.
The vendors have that. They don't have to buy any of them. The vendors already have that. But unless you ask for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, and then to determine how many people might need it, we wanted to put a form or something on the registration thing. So then ICANN can get the data they need for how many to order from the vendor.
Yep. Yep.
But it's
So,
these simple things that things will do, other places may not do them.
so
But it's things like
it
that.
really gets down to the devil in the details, right? So I think they did a half measure, and I remember that question, but it's not enough, right? So
They didn't know that. They didn't know that.
so what we're moving away for more and more technology-based, phone-based internet. So are we looking at a whole new set of challenges? I know when we were in Turkey, they wanted you to have your mobile and use scan a Mobi code,
I don't
QR
scan them.
code.
I don't do QR codes, but that's just me.
Okay. So is
I
there
don't do QR codes because they're inherently unsafe.
so but is there a whole other set of challenges that as we move to adoption of new technology
Yeah.
that's facing the community?
Yeah, so the whole new set of people relying on videos that are not captioned.
Right.
People relying on captions that not working well with people. Um, how many times you can see you have no visual issues, but yet you have a hard time with captures. How many bicycles or motorcycles where you think and all parts of the motorcycle should be clicked? No, it's
Right.
only the picture. You know, visual people with no visual issues have problems with captions. Imagine people with visual disabilities, what problems they have with the captions. So as we're going
Right.
through
Right.
more of these, there's more of a problem for, and there's also in AI, there's also a problem, but there's a that has to do also with and the language, just like we have just like we have issues with persons of color, and the language models not, and the AI not being trained, is also they're not trained. The self-driving cars, the lights, all those things are not are not trained on a database that has persons with disabilities.
Hmm.
So, like, someone may be in a wheelchair who goes forward and backwards, the system's not going to know what they are doing because they don't have enough training data in in the things. They went the Before they were released, they didn't have enough training data, just like in the language labs. There's not enough training data. And if you don't have a large amount of data that the system has been trained on, it won't know these things. So the eye can see more of these things. So you could see that the person may be going backwards, but to go forwards, but the computer may not understand that.
Gotcha.
Eh,
So on a slightly different tack, because we don't have much time, but
Right.
we have the purging of U.S. aid. We have the maybe the American Disabilities Act is being purged as well, or questioned. Are we going to see a new era under the current government of lessening rules, of less obligations for organizations and companies to actually be compliant?
Well, I don't know about that, but what we're trying to do, we're advocating for, and is for all organizations to adopt the WCAG standards. So the World Wide Web,
Okay.
W3C,
Yep.
has a accessibility. They're called guidelines or recommendations, but they're really standards. And we want all organizations who roll out any sites or any content to be WCAG compliant, WCAG version 2 at least. And web content generally refers to the information in a web page or web application that includes text, images, sounds, anything that describes a structure or presentation. And the WCAG guidelines apply to dynamic content and such as multimedia, etc.
Hmm.
Um, and so the W3C is who develops these web standards like HTML and others. And so they develop it through a process working with individuals and others, a multi-stakeholder process.
Gotcha.
Um, and what we want is to make sure that all organizations, all websites, all others are working with these standards. And they produced all their work are based on the 4 principles of accessibility, which are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So that if information must be presentable to users in a way they can perceive it. So if
Okay.
anyone, so like a person with disabilities cannot see it, the screen reader reads it, it's not perceivable. Operable. They must be able to operate the interface. Understandable. Information and user must be understandable. It means users must be able to understand the information as well as how to operate it. And robust. Content must be robust enough that it can be interpreted widely by a wide variety of users. And if any of these don't work or fail, the content is not accessible. So these are just certain standards that we want all organizations to follow. But what we want also is that there are a couple of people who are using AI to others or other ways of interpreting things that are not necessarily helpful or not standard. And it needs to be, it's much more expensive to fix a website than when it's built initially. Just like in everything, when you're building something, when you build a road, you want to put down, that's why the emphasis for fiber, you want to put down the fiber, all the stuff on it, because otherwise you have to dig up the road, and that's
Sure.
expensive. So build it right from the onset. And also, yes, ICANN does have most of its websites are all accessible, but they also need to be continued to be viewed. And so someone with an accessibility, they need to hire firms, whereas ISOC and others say, oh, we'll have volunteers do that.
Hmm.
That doesn't work. Now, we are also, if I posted the guidelines on our accessibility guidelines for meetings, but that also brings in not only people who are visually have visual impairments or hearing impairments, but we cannot forget about the people with cognitive impairments.
Right.
So, for instance, they post in a chat. They may not speak. So someone has to read their stuff from the chat into the record.
Right.
And asking someone from there to write do things. So the problem when some things are made accessible, they may be made accessible better for persons with hearing disabilities or visual disabilities, but then not accessible people with cognitive.
Sure.
Because when screens have too many images, other stuff, that draws them away. Also, when you're looking at food, when you're putting out food for a meeting, if you have spicy food, that's very distractive to persons with cognitive disabilities. So there's a lot to take in, but it's also and some of the things that we're working on in the accessibility toolkit, and our recommendations for next year's IGF is have another form line they have one for accessibility, but also have one on there for are you a person with disability, so that we could get a special name tag. So like the IGF ones have different colors or different letters, and they get you into different parts of rooms. So if we have one for disability, persons with disability who are actually on site, they can get access to bathrooms that are easier or accessible, or maybe in staff areas that have no lines, so they don't have to wait on lines with the wheelchairs or with the crutches. Some certain small improvements which are available, and even ICANN would be willing to do that type of thing. It's something that doesn't cost much to anything to implement, but does a lot of improvements to that.
Judith, I see
Go ahead.
I see a problem right off, which is if you just say disabilities globally, someone who's hearing impaired doesn't need a bathroom that's wheelchair accessible. Somebody who's in a wheelchair doesn't necessarily need access to something that
Yes.
deals with
but
the implementation gets
yes,
complex really, really quickly.
yes, but it's not that as many of those. It's not as many of those. So, um, it's not really impacting. For instance, ICANN has an unstated policy that people often take advantage of one, if you put down you have disability and you would like a wheelchair, they will rent and pay for an electronic wheelchair for the ICANN meeting. That's a large expense, but they don't want to do it for people who are not going to use it, because they've had some issues of people who did not use the wheelchairs. Oh, I didn't think you were going to rent it for me. Yes, we already paid for it. So they do most of their accessibility things are done on private one-to-ones. You say you have an issue, they will pay for it. There's people who use it when they shouldn't be. Just like there's people who use it when who say, bring a doctor's note and say, oh, I have a pain in my neck, and they get a doctor to sign off and I need first class. And they're not using they're overusing the benefit. They're not using the benefit because when they travel themselves, they would not the real test is someone who puts in a thing that they need first class to travel and then pays for it themselves when they don't get it, for institutions that don't pay for it. That is person who should have the benefit, not someone who, oh, it's too expensive when I travel and I'm traveling on the cheap, so I'm not paying for myself. But then why do you expect ICANN to pay for it? Oh, well, they have money and I don't. Even if they do, or they choose to pay, there's a way I can get them to pay for it, so let me do it. I think those are taking advantage of a system that is meant to help out persons with disabilities, or that's meant to, same ways in our building and in a lot of buildings in the US, people register comfort animals when the building is now pet. And you have a comfort rooster, you have a comfort large dog. They have not, they're hurting the people who need dogs for disability reasons, and not all disabilities are visual. That's one thing that we're also missing, that some disabilities are not visual. I mean, we cannot see them. You cannot see someone who has who doesn't have a physical disability.
Right.
If they
Yeah.
have, if they have strokes or whatever, or, seizures, and they have a seizure dog, or someone who out that, who's
Right.
trained, not all disabilities are visual. And so we are now hurting the process by all people trying to take advantage of the system, hurting the process for people who actually need it.
There will always be people who take advantage of a system, and they're a small minority. But there's also lawyers who benefit a lot from the ADA rules and regulations. They love to sue. So yeah, it's not a perfect system, but I think we're showing how work like yourself, Judith, and others have actually um, showed the right path for organizations to take ownership of this. And there, when they say internet for all or internet for everyone, and we want the more voices involved, it takes money and time. But I am concerned that Judith, when you with the next generation of people. Can you, because we're almost out of time, but can you share with your views on the next gen or the fellows in any of these organizations? Are they getting any kind of training? Are they getting any awareness? Is this an issue the next generation that will take your job and my job and Bill's and say, okay, I'll take ownership of this now?
I don't know, because then they are not getting, since the ICANN is not training them on accessibility issues. No one is trained. There's no culture of accessibility.
Okay.
If there's a culture, then people would understand those. People, I've talked to the comms people, you have to train them. Everyone in ICANN who I've talked to are all willing to be more inclusive. They just do not know.
Hmm.
They never thought of it. Oh, I never thought of that. The only people who have thought of things are the language services, but they also have the problem is the perfect is the enemy of the good. And so they won't do it X. But well, you have to, but having someone whose job responsibility has accessibility in it is the key to growing a culture of accessibility. And until that
Yeah.
happens, we keep fighting.
Yeah, it is a fight. It is a fight. No one's just going to turn around and say, "Oh, we're going to think of this community because it's the right thing to do." You know,
Bill, did we lose Glenn?
We seem to have lost Glenn's sound, yes.
He's frozen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, he's not, he's unmoved.
Glenn, we lost you.
how's that? Am I back?
Yes.
You're back.
Oh, sorry. Guys, this is a wonderful conversation. I could go on, Judith. I know how passionate, but the difference is a lot of people have passion, but they actually haven't thought it through in terms of all the work and actually making a difference. And I think you've made a great difference, Judith. And I congratulate you on your work. And you and Ganella and Jolly have made a difference, and it's tough. I think I would love to see the next generation mentoring with you and being involved.
Right. Yeah. So, but I'm happy to mentor anyone. At ICANN Seattle, I was talking to one of the next gens, but we continually fight this battle. The only thing I've noticed with ICANN as opposed to ISOC is that ICANN, when you notice something wrong, they work to fix it on the technical end. And ISOC, when you know something wrong, no, we have to wait for the next generation.
I think there might be some change there with the new leadership at
Right.
ISOC.
Right.
I've had a few conversations with both the foundation and ISOC on issues that I am I'm concerned about. But all we can do is wait. Maybe they were giving me window dressing. I don't know, but we will
Well,
see.
also, it's also important to get, I think, of the trustees running again, Charles Mock has the most focus on accessibility issues, and I'm working with persons with disability much more so than the others. And so hopefully chapters will put Charles in the back on the board.
It's another election now. So those who are members of your ISOC chapter, read the bios, attend I assume ISOC is having somebody meet the candidates.
They did the candidates form, which was excellent this year.
Okay.
It was an email discussion.
Judith, last comments before we go?
No, check out the accessibility guidelines. We are volunteers are translating them into multiple languages. We already have French. Betty Fausta has translated into French. Titi, who works for the Italian government, translated into Italian. Alfredo said he's doing Spanish. We're gonna have Arabic. CGI BR, the Brazilian internet owns the domain, is doing Portuguese. So we're working like you have to have this translated in multiple languages so that we can put it up on our website and just have, get people knowledgeable about meetings, accessible meetings, what things to do.
Okay, excellent. Final comment, Bill, before we leave?
Nope.
Short
And
and
I'm
sweet.
happy to have this discussion at a regular, like this is the L group, at another group, we could have different discussions or more pointed ones, more targeting instead of accessibility in general, but also like what things can be done in making documents or words or others,
Okay.
videos, others accessible.
Yeah, the conversation is going a lot further. Today was a great, dive, but it could be a much deeper dive. Hopefully, some of our current students, after they review this recording, will get inspired. How can they reach you, Judith?
Oh, so you could email me at judith@jhellerstein.com, but I'll post in the chat. Or they could, if they're interested in DCAD, the DCAD website is igf-dcad.org. And that is up there. We also have, you'll see there's a list of resources and other things to help again up there. There's also, you can also link to the Accessibility SIG website with all our old videos where when we used to, before ISOC went through its changes and created standing groups, we were a special interest group.
Right, right.
And then we were chartered. We decided not to go the chapter route like the interplanetary because we didn't really need to.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, I think you made the right choice. But I think that's it. I have to run
Yeah,
off to another meeting on universal acceptance. We're doing an event this Friday talking about our UA Day and then the big event on April 4th. So I'd like to conclude. Thanks again, and we'll chat later.
yes. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Judith. Bye.